This vacation home is exclusively for my parents. I won't let your parents use it. I was dumbfounded by my husband's remarks, having nonchalantly purchased $1 million vacation home. So that's what this is all about. Having learned his motives, I reached the end of my tether. Fine, but you're going to regret this, you know? I won't. Don't ever show your face to me again. There he was, crossing his arms with a smug grin on his face. If that's how it is, then I won't hold back. I'll make sure he regrets it. My name is Kathy. I married my husband Robert 4 years ago, and we've been living as a couple. Neither of us have any particular hobbies, so our savings kept growing. If I had to name one indulgence, perhaps it would be brewing coffee from beans on a weekend morning. Speaking of which, your mom's birthday is coming up soon, isn't it? With a freshly brewed coffee in hand, I asked my husband. We're both in our mid-30s. Robert's parents turned 60 this year, a year ahead of my parents. How about we give them a spa retreat as a gift for their birthdays? It'd be a nice memory, don't you think? A good idea, right? When I suggested this, my husband agreed, saying, "That might be a good idea. I'll ask my parents if they want anything specific. If not, we'll give them the spa retreat. It'll kill 2 birds in 1 stone." I didn't mean it like that. I know. Just joking. Next time I see my parents, I'll talk to them about it. Kathy, can you look up some good spas? I got it. How about we go on a trip too? It would be nice for a change. 2 weeks passed and my mother-in-law's birthday was fast approaching. Hey, we need to make a reservation soon. At this rate, we won't even make it for my father-in-law's birthday. Did you talk to your parents? In response to my hurried question, my husband answered leisurely. Oh, did I not tell you? I've already asked their preferences, so it's fine. We don't need to book the spa retreat. Is that so? Then it's okay. But what did they say they wanted? Eager to choose a gift together, I asked that question. But my husband gave me a look that suggested he found it troublesome. I'll handle everything. It's my parents' 60th birthday. You don't have to get involved, Kathy. I couldn't hide my surprise at Robert's words. He had never brushed me off like this before. That's not a nice way to say it. I was getting emotional. Why won't you tell me? We've always chosen gifts together. Every year, we had decided on gifts for each other's parents together. So why suddenly, at a significant milestone like their 60th birthday, would he say something like this? I didn't understand my husband's thinking and was frustrated. I don't like to boast, but I'm generally a mild-mannered person. I rarely raise my voice, but my husband wouldn't change his mind. In the end, Robert wouldn't tell me what his parents wanted. Since then, there's been an uncomfortable atmosphere between us, and we only communicate about necessary matters. Even when we drink coffee brewed from beans, we remain silent. The day before my mother-in-law's birthday, my husband spoke to me for the first time in a while. We're going out tomorrow to celebrate Mom's 60th birthday, so get ready, Kathy. We're staying overnight, so be prepared for that too. When he suddenly said we were going out, I panicked. What? Where are we going? If we're staying overnight, you should have said so earlier. I have a lot to prepare. I just told you, didn't I? You're definitely going to be surprised. In contrast to my panic, my husband was in high spirits. The next morning, we got into the car early and went to pick up my in-laws. They were very excited from the morning. I'm so excited. I never thought I'd get to celebrate my birthday like this. I really can't thank you enough. Right, honey? Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Robert, Kathy. No, happy birthday, Mom-in-law. I felt awkward because I hadn't been involved in choosing the present at all. Even when my in-laws expressed their gratitude, I could only respond vaguely. Then my husband said something. Really, it's all thanks to Kathy. Thanks. He was backing me up. I was really happy with my husband's consideration. We'd had been at odds recently, but it felt like we could go back to our old relationship. My gloomy feelings lifted, and I decided to enjoy the journey to our destination. We arrived at a beautiful cabin nestled in the woods. The entrance was spacious, and the living room was entirely glass, making it quite attractive. The cabin was surrounded by trees, giving it a harmonious feel with nature. There were 3 bedrooms and even a hot tub in the bath. "We're staying here? It's so lovely." I excitedly talked to my husband and apologized for my previous attitude. "I never thought Robert would choose a place like this. I don't think I could have found such a wonderful place. Leaving it to Robert was the right decision. I'm sorry, I've been so irritable lately." My excitement skyrocketed at the sight of the beautiful cabin. Then he blurted out something unexpected. "It's no biggie. If I were alone, I wouldn't have been able to buy such a cabin. It's because of Kathy that I was able to buy it." "What?" And suddenly, I was at a loss for words. "Buy? What's he talking about?" As my head was filling with questions, my in-laws joined the conversation. "Thank you so much, Kathy. We never thought we'd get such a beautiful cabin." "Right? We were thinking about setting up a new home when we turned 60 and even considering living together. But remember, we decided not to live together, right? So we were like, we'd love a cabin, and we talked to Robert about it." From the beginning of our marriage, it's true that I declined to offer to live together once. I wanted to enjoy our life as a couple, and my in-laws were still in good health, so I thought it was too early for us to live together. Robert agreed with my thoughts, and we agreed to live together when my in-laws began to have difficulty with their lives. But I never expected them to ask for a new home as a present for their 60th birthday. Especially a cabin? That was going too far. Trying to control my rising panic, I asked my husband, "Robert, this is a joke, right? There's no way we could afford to buy such a lovely cabin. What's the point in springing a surprise on me? It's mother-in-law's birthday. The surprise should be for her." "It's not a joke. This is a genuine cabin that we bought." "What?" Upon hearing my husband's reply, everything went dark before my eyes. While I was in a state of shock, he continued, "Man, it really saved us. They said I couldn't get a mortgage on my own income. It was a good decision to get a joint mortgage." "Hold on a minute. I didn't hear anything about this." "I just told you, and it's not a bad thing for Kathy, is it? You just said it was a lovely cabin. It's ours." "That's not the issue, isn't it? How much did this vacation home cost you?" My frustration aimed at him, he dropped a surprising fact. $1 million. "What? $1 million? It was for my parents' 60th birthday. I thought we'd splurge a bit," he said. The amount was more than I could have ever imagined, leaving me dizzy. As if to add insult to injury, my husband began to spill an astonishing fact. "We couldn't get a loan for $1 million property in both our names, so I used all the money we've been saving since our marriage, the joint account, as a down payment," he confessed. "What?" By this point, I was past beyond being shocked and was just plain dumbfounded. Why could he be so selfish without even consulting me? I couldn't understand it at all. Despite my shock, my husband continued nonchalantly, "Well, it's already bought. Can't do anything about it now. Besides, I took into consideration Kathy's option of not living together. Isn't that good enough? And this vacation home, we can do whatever we want with it. Our vacation times will be more fun, won't they?" His carefree attitude was nothing short of exasperating. But now that it's come to this, there's nothing we can do. Just as Robert said, this vacation home was indeed lovely, and our holiday enjoyment would increase. Fine, it's already bought, so there's nothing to be done. But you could have at least consulted me. I muttered resignedly. At that, my husband brightened up and laughed. That's more like it. I should have consulted you. I apologize. I wanted it to be a surprise for you too, Kathy. You're quite something, aren't you? Without my knowledge, Robert got a joint mortgage, even using our joint savings, but luckily, we don't have any big expenses coming up. I earn significantly more than Robert, and I have my own savings. Let's just accept it and think of it as a good purchase. Feeling resolved, I decided to enjoy the grand celebration for my mother-in-law's birthday party and a 2-day stay at the villa. Once home, I brewed a coffee and indulged in the memories of our villa stay. It was surprising, but the villa was really splendid. It had a wood-burning stove in the living room, which would be enjoyable in winter. Feeling happy, I spoke to Robert. Hey, when are we going back to the villa? I want to get some new dishes for the villa. Yeah, I'll check with my parents. Can't we go by ourselves? Well, the villa is technically in our names, but it was a present for my parents' 60th anniversary. It'd be wrong if they had plans, right? I had a bad feeling. Even though it's in our names, I thought it might practically become my in-laws' property. I quickly suggested, as it's our villa, we can invite my parents too, right? Yeah, if they're available. He answered non-committally, but he didn't refuse. That's a relief. The villa won't become my in-laws' property. But that was too optimistic. For the past 6 months, I'd not been allowed to stay at the villa once. I go there, but I can't stay overnight. I drop my in-laws off at the villa, am made to prepare food, and then have to return home. The next day, I pick them up from the villa, clean up, and drive them back. It's been like this for 6 months. Despite my many complaints, Robert always has some excuse and sometimes even yelled at me. But today, I'm not giving up, because soon it will be my parents' birthday. Hey, Robert, my father's birthday is in 2 months. We can invite them to the villa, right? It's our villa. I emphasized our villa and appealed to Robert. But his reply was the same as always. If my parents don't have plans. That again? It's always the same. We haven't stayed at the villa once in the 6 months since we bought it. It's always your parents who get priority. It's our villa. We should be the priority. Plus, I'm also paying the mortgage and the down payment. My parents should be able to stay too. Today, I'm not backing down. I put my foot down more than usual. Then Robert frowned, replied like this. Shut up. That vacation house is for my parents only. I won't let your parents use it. I suppose that was part of your plan all along, wasn't it? No wonder you bought the vacation house without telling me. The tolerance I had shown until now snapped in my heart, making a sound as if something had broken. I'll never forgive you. Don't think you can get away with such selfish behavior. I proposed the following to my husband. Fine, if that's how it is. I won't hold back any longer. Let's get a divorce. What the hell? You're such a petty woman. Well, whatever. I'm quite appreciated by my parents for buying that vacation home, and I'm sure my mom would do the housework. I won't be in trouble at all without you. Of course, if we're getting a divorce, I won't let you use that vacation house. Still okay with you? My husband had a triumphant look on his face, crossing his arms with satisfaction. I felt pathetic for falling for such a man's smooth talk, but it's too late to regret now. All that's left is to get my revenge. I lowered my voice and put pressure on my husband. You sure? You're going to regret it? Like hell I will. Fine, it's settled then. Don't ever show up in front of me again. The next day, I filed for divorce. It was accepted without issue, and I decided to head back to my parents' house on foot. The call from Roberts to my parents' house came a few months later. When I answered the phone, he was in a panic. Is that you, Kathy? What do you want at this point? We have nothing left to talk about. In response to my cold reply, he shouted back frantically, I tried to call your cell phone. Why didn't you pick up? Some person's claiming to be your lawyer came to my house today. Hey, this is something you asked for, right? Can you explain it properly to me? You don't understand? What don't you understand? It's exactly as the lawyer said. Since we're divorced, I don't intend to pay the mortgage. If you don't comply, I'm considering selling the vacation house. That's all. But that vacation house is in both our names. Even if we're divorced, it's only natural for you to keep paying the mortgage, right? To my ex-husband, who was at his wit's end, I calmly stated, despite being in both our names, I'm not allowed to use it, right? So why do I have to keep paying the mortgage? That's what doesn't make sense to me. Oh, no, but it's a shared property, right? You should be the one paying. This is going nowhere. That's why I asked a lawyer. If you're going to insist on your point of view, I'm hanging up. If there's anything else, please contact my lawyer. I don't have time to talk to this unreasonable man. I have my own business to take care of. Hold on, wait up. I messed up. Let's use the vacation house alternately, okay? That should be fine, right? You're saying keep paying the mortgage and I'll let you use it in turns. I got no attachments to that vacation house anymore. After all, I already bought a new one. Wait, what? Yes, I gifted the vacation house to my parents for their 60th birthday. It's not exactly $1 million estate, but a cozy cottage that they love. Are we done here? I don't have time to be chit-chatting with you. Hold on, please. I quit my job. I know that. What? It was probably my father who caused it, wasn't it? My father is an executive in a top-tier company. He has many acquaintances, presidents, and executives of other companies. Robert's company president was one of them. Angry at Robert's treatment toward me, my father must have talked to Robert's company president about it. How can we have such a person in our company? The president expressed his anger. I don't know the details from there, but I had heard that Robert chose to resign on his own. I'm sure Robert's company president did something behind the scenes, considering the future. Hey, help me out, Robert pleaded with a tear-choked voice. I've started receiving contemptuous looks from my coworkers. I chose to quit. I found a new job, but the salary is less than before. I can't keep up with the mortgage payments on my own. Your father is the cause, right? Then isn't it his responsibility to continue paying the mortgage? He's so self-centered. How much further will he go to satisfy himself? I was at my limit with his selfish comments. Sure, my father might have caused you to quit your job, but the one who created the initial cause was you, Robert, wasn't it? Don't twist it to suit your narrative. You're the one who's wrong for touching our shared property because you wanted to look good to your parents. You've brought this on yourself. I didn't think it would turn out like this. You reap what you sow. I hope you suffer in the depths of mortgage hell, you selfish jerk. Wait, please. I heard his desperate cry, but I hung up the phone without waiting. In the months following, I negotiated through a lawyer and finally got out of the mortgage for that vacation house. In the end, Robert couldn't continue paying the mortgage on his own, and the vacation house seemed to be sold. Because the property's value had decreased, it seemed Robert had ended up in debt. Even his in-laws were flabbergasted, and he is reportedly living a ragged life in a cheap apartment now. His parents, too, are now the talk of the neighborhood for losing the vacation house they were always boasting about. On the other hand, I'm leading a busy, fulfilling days as the vice president of my father's company. Now the happiest times or when the three of us visit the vacation house on our days off and relax with a cup of coffee.
From childhood, I was raised and cherished by my grandparents. In a minor accident, my beloved grandmother passed away. During that time, out of the blue, I received a message from my long unheard from sister-in-law. The message read, "I need you to take care of your grandmother who passed away 3 months ago." There is so much I wanted to say, but my cherished grandmother is not there anymore. I witnessed it with my own eyes. This call would serve as a catalyst for everything to come to light. I am Linda Thompson, a 45-year-old single woman. The last time I had a significant male presence in my life was back in college. After parting with him, I dove headfirst into the working world post-graduation, laboring in the marketing department of a major cosmetics company, where I worked overtime and weekends as the norm. Before I knew it, I had missed my chance to get married. That's not the reason, but 6 years ago, I changed careers and took a desk job at a nursing home. I used to commute for an hour and a half one way on crowded trains, and if I made it back home on the last train, I considered myself lucky. Now, I work at a place less than a 10-minute bike ride away from home. I get the usual days off as per the calendar, and overtime is almost non-existent. But that's not why I changed jobs either. I've never moved out of my childhood home. I'm confident in my financial standing, and I'm pretty good at household chores, if I do say so myself. So, why haven't I moved out? Because I love my family, especially my dear grandmother. I was born and raised in California. The members of my family are my parents, grandparents, and my brother, who is 5 years my senior. His name is Brian Thompson, now 50 years old. While I just said I love my family, my feelings toward my brother are complex. I used to love him as my brother. He was a gentle and caring older brother, always looking after his little sister. But Brian changed. After graduating from college, he got a job in car sales, moved out on his own early on, and married a woman from his workplace just 2 years later. From then on, we gradually grew apart, and he never shows up at our childhood home. Not during Thanksgiving, not during spring break, not even during the Christmas holidays. I vaguely know that he lives somewhere in the South, but that's about it. I don't even know if he has children. I can't even remember when I last saw Brian's face, or when we last spoke on the phone. It feels like it's been at least 5 years. Ever since I became a manager, I've been super busy. I'm leaving everything home related to you. Those are the last words I remember from Brian. My current impression of him can be summarized as, what an unfeeling man. That's why I made a career change and decided to not move away from my childhood home, to protect the house. My parents are both retired. My grandfather, 93 years old, suffered a stroke a few years ago, and though he recovered, he requires constant care and can't live independently. Currently, my parents are taking care of him. And then, there's my grandmother, Betty Thompson, aged 92. My dearly beloved Grandma Betty. In our house, both of my parents were working, so it was my grandparents who took care of my siblings and me when we were little. Especially Grandma Betty. She taught me everything I needed to survive. These days, she can't get out much, but she's lively enough to walk around the house freely. That's why I decided to change my job and working in a nursing home so that I can take care of her if anything happens. On one particular day, "I'm off to work," I said as I was getting ready to leave the house, when Grandma Betty called from behind me. "Lynn, you forgot something!" "Huh? I didn't forget anything," I replied, but she said, "Here, have some hard candies," and handed me a few black licorice candies. "Oh, right, thanks." That brought a smile to my face. Licorice has always been a favorite of both Grandma Betty's and mine. I put them in my suit pocket and left the house with a smile. Suddenly, tragedy struck. Or maybe it's called a tragedy because it happened suddenly, but that doesn't matter now. Grandma Betty had a severe accident. According to my father, after she had hung her laundry on the balcony upstairs as usual, she missed a step on the stairs and fell. it was something we always feared. We always told her to leave the laundry to Mom and Dad, that the stairs were dangerous and not to go upstairs. But Grandma Betty, like me, was stubborn. She was a believer in doing what she can do by herself. No one is to blame. It was just an unfortunate accident that could have happened at any time. Everything happened quickly after that. Grandma Betty, who had suffered complex fractures to her femur and pelvis, never made it home from the hospital. Just 4 months later, she passed away due to old age. Of course, I was sad, and I did cry. I cried and broke down crying, but I am an adult now, and now I am the breadwinner of this house. I don't have time to wallow in sorrow. Funeral, cremation, interment, I have to take care of everything. Grandma Betty was originally from the Midwest, and now we don't have any close relatives to contact. We decided at a family meeting to have a funeral only with close family members. We have to invite my brother and his wife. I thought they would come without hesitation, but I was wrong. I couldn't reach them by phone or WhatsApp. I also sent an email, but no reply. I sent a text message as a last resort, and the reply came on the day of the cremation. "I'm very busy overseas for work. Sorry, but I can't make it. I'll send the money later," it said. I don't care about the money! Upon seeing the message, I found myself speaking out loud unintentionally. Could his job really be so important that he can't even make time to say goodbye to our grandma who adored us so much? It's hard to accept. Into Grandma's casket, her makeup impeccably done, looking like she was just peacefully sleeping, were placed flowers and a photo of Grandpa, along with her favorite black candy. Something changed in my perception of my brother while doing this. From that moment, I started to despise him. Since then, the seasons have changed, and it is now winter. For me, it doesn't matter whether it's spring, summer, autumn, or winter. I don't care if it's always winter or always summer. I've even considered quitting this job, but Grandpa is still alive. My parents will need care at some point too. I still need to earn a lot for that. With those thoughts, I was mechanically getting through my work during the lunch break on a weekday, my heart filled with emptiness. Then, I got a call from an unexpected person. If it hadn't been registered, I wouldn't have answered. My smartphone displayed sister-in-law. She is Heather Thompson, 46 years old. She's my brother's wife. In other words, she's my sister-in-law. The only time we talked was briefly after their wedding. That's all I remember. Why would she be calling now? Maybe I should just ignore it. But the ringing won't stop. Finally, I sighed and decided to pick up the phone. Yes, this is Linda. Sorry to disturb you at work. This is Heather, Brian's wife? It's been a while. Heather started with an apologetic tone. Ah, that's right. Despite being in a higher position and older, she always maintained a humble attitude. When she suddenly decided to marry my brother, she made sure to greet my parents and me, even on behalf of my brother. To put it simply, she's a good person. That's why I couldn't understand why she would contact me now. It's okay, but do you need something? I tried my best not to sound cold as I asked. It's hard for me to bring this up. Heather hesitated for a moment before continuing. About Betty, your grandmother? What happened to my grandmother? I inadvertently raised my voice. We've been taking care of her on my husband's orders, but it's already past the promised 1 month. Could you possibly come to pick her up? What? I couldn't comprehend what Heather was saying. So, we're taking care of Betty at our... Wait a minute. That was all I could muster. Think, Linda, think. So, you're saying that you've been taking care of my grandmother, Betty, who died 3 months ago? This was the question that came out after thinking hard. I knew it sounded nonsensical, but so did Heather. Yes, we've been taking care of Betty at our... Wait, she died? 3 months ago? A genuinely surprised voice replied. Why don't we calm down a bit, I suggested, and Heather agreed. A few minutes later, regaining my composure, I carefully explained to Heather how my grandmother had passed away. In contrast, Heather's response was utterly perplexing. At the house where Brian and Heather are living, She said, "We were told that your grandmother needed care and to take her in until arrangements were made at her home, and that they had been living together with my grandmother. There are two possible conclusions. We're both not lying, right?" This was the first one. If that's true, then my brother, Brian, is the one lying. This was the second one. I had anticipated it to some extent. The reasons why one would tell such a blatant lie that would be exposed so quickly. But now, there are things I need to do before pursuing that. I'd like to get in touch with Brian right away, but he's basically unreachable on his mobile, I told Heather. I've never used my husband's cell phone either. He won't let me. She continues. However, I think I could talk to him on my cell phone while he's at home. And, she says. And? I interject. He's been working remotely more often lately. I think if I ask, he'd probably be able to have a video call. I certainly think there's a power in face-to-face persuasion. But there's a problem. I'm not even sure where you two are living now. I mentioned the issue. We've been living in Y City in California for over 10 years, so it's easy for us to visit your house, Linda, she says. For now, we agreed to talk to Brian on Heather's cell phone at night and ended the call. We devised various other plans with mixed feelings. Y City is just the next town over. How much lying will satisfy him? Expecting me to take care of some stranger's old woman just a few months after Grandma passed away? It's too much. No, it's repugnant. I got home and called Brian on Heather's cell phone at the appointed time of 8 p.m. By the way, Heather is also waiting in my room at home, thanks to her kindness and enthusiasm. Despite my constant attempts to contact him, he answered Heather's cell phone in just 3 rings. I made sure the conversation was audible to Heather by putting the sound on speaker. "Heather, where are you right now? You haven't even prepared dinner," he says in an imposing and arrogant tone. He's not the Brian I knew anymore. "It's me, Brian," I declare. "Huh?" He's clearly confused. I thought so, and waited for my brother's words. "That's Linda, isn't it? Why? Where's Heather?" "I'm here," Heather replies tersely. Why are you with Linda?" Brian stammers for a moment, then quickly finds his words. "Don't tell me. Did you tell Linda about that matter?" he asks. "Yes, I did," she replies with a calm demeanor. "I told you it was too early to talk about it," he exclaims. My brother's sudden shift in attitude about that issue? Of course, it's about our grandmother. "I've heard from Heather that you've been working remotely lately," I began. "What about it?" I could almost see the scowl on my brother's face. "Why don't we talk face to face using a remote work app from here on out? I'll send you the ID and password," I suggested. "If you refuse, I'll take Linda and go back home," Heather offers a cover fire. "Fine." My brother grudgingly agreed in a reluctant tone. I sent the ID and password to my brother using Heather's smartphone. We waited a moment. Although the face that appeared on the computer screen was slightly fatter than the last time I saw him, it was undoubtedly my brother Brian. It's Brian. "So, what's so important that we have to face each other to talk about? I'm busy here." His attempt to play dumb at this point made my blood boil. "Isn't it obvious? It's about our grandmother. What do you mean by saying we should take in our grandmother who died 3 months ago?" To my surprise, he replied calmly. "You must be misunderstanding something." My brother calmly continues. "Our grandmother isn't dead. I'm taking care of her at my place. It was you, Linda, who asked for this, wasn't it?" What? I was at a loss for words. Was he really so afraid of Heather finding out the truth? Could a person really stoop this low? And this was my own brother. I was so angry that I was on the verge of tears. "But I sent you a text message," I said through tears. "I don't remember. Grandma's here with me right now. Do you want me to bring her here?" "I want you to bring her here." Brian was completely defiant. I had no time for tears. Brian left his seat and returned a few minutes later with an old woman in a wheelchair. "Say hello, Grandma." "Linda, it's been a while. I'm Betty," the old woman spoke in a halting voice. I just wanted him to stop this farce. I felt anger boiling up in me again. She's a completely different person. Indeed, the old woman on the computer screen was nothing like my beloved grandmother. For one thing, my grandmother would never call me Linda. As you age, your appearance changes. She's been showing signs of dementia recently, so it can't be helped that her memories of you are vague. Brian seemed determined to deny everything to the bitter end. So, you won't acknowledge the death certificate submitted by the district office? Of course not. Documents can be forged these days. He smirked. I was prepared for this. I had a plan in place. Just wait, I'll show you some evidence too. Evidence? Leaving a perplexed Brian behind, I exit the room. A few minutes later, I return to my room with the evidence. Well, isn't it Brian? Long time no see, you ungrateful one. Grandpa? You were supposed to be bedridden. Faced with the sudden evidence, Brian's eyes grow wide. At one point, I was prepared to die. Even now, I can't go to the bathroom on my own. But my brain's still in good shape. Grandpa continues. I've heard all about it from Linda. Are you saying that the one there next to you is my wife, Betty? Nonsense. Betty was a lot more beautiful. Uh-oh. Cornered, Brian hangs up his phone. He's probably trying to log out of the video call. Heather, who had remained silent till now, spoke up. Are you running away, Brian? Going to Catherine's place? Brian's face turned pale, clearly visible even through the computer screen. How do you know that? I've thought this for a while now, Brian. You underestimate me, Heather insists. Your grandmother has frequently let it slip. Catherine, Catherine. Of course, it's not my name, nor my mother's. Well, that's... I also confirmed with Linda, and she had no recollection of the name Catherine. I had a suspicion for a long time and hired a private detective to investigate possible infidelity. What? The results came out quickly. Pictures of you at the scene of the affair, that your grandmother is Catherine's grandmother, that you have been preparing various things to divorce me. Yes, everything started from Heather's women's intuition that Brian had a high chance of having an affair with another woman. A relationship with a late 20s subordinate at work named Catherine. Brian had taken over the care of her dementia-stricken grandmother to win favor with Catherine. He was also plotting to dump her into a care home and push her off of my family home before admission. That he was planning to divorce Heather without any blame and remarry Catherine using every means possible. Heather proved all of this and then approached me. Honestly, she is an extremely intelligent woman, which seemed unimaginable from her appearance and demeanor. Do you have anything to say? I asked Brian, only intending to listen. I'm really sorry. Forgive me. I didn't mean to deceive you. Heather too. I'll break up with Catherine, so... said Brian, bowing his head through the screen.
Science these days have certainly developed. We can clearly see your crying face from afar.
Grandpa, please help me. Fool. After using Betty and betraying my beloved granddaughter and daughter-in-law, I don't ever want to see your face again. This is the last time. Linda, you too? Well, the most authoritative person here is Grandpa. And by the way, I also never want to see your face again. Heather. I've already completed the divorce mediation process. I'm going back to my parents' house, so let's meet in court next. Well then, goodbye, big brother. With those words, I hit the exit button on the remote conversation on my laptop. The seasons have changed, and it's now the time of the autumn equinox. I was alone, visiting my grandmother's grave. With hands clasped together, I made various reports in my mind. Brian divorced Heather. Naturally, the outcome was overwhelmingly in Heather's favor. Brian ended up having to pay an enormous amount of alimony and even came crying back home at one point. However, thanks to Grandpa, who's still mentally sharp, a virtual disownment took place. Apparently, even his will states Brian is no longer family. He had wished to remarry Catherine, but women in this world are not so sweet to marry a divorced man in his 50s with not only zero savings, but debt. Eventually, he had to quit his longtime job at the automobile company, and now he's reportedly living in a cheap one-bedroom apartment and paying alimony while working odd jobs. In this day and age, it's probably difficult for someone over 50 with no significant qualifications to get re-employed. It's all a case of reaping what you sow. Most of the information about Brian came from Heather. Heather and I hit it off after that, and we meet quite often for tea as friends. With that being said, I finished everything, grandmother. I'll come again, I said as I stood up from the gravestone. Then, a slightly strong breeze blew, and at the same time, I heard a voice. A voice I loved so much. Linda, thank you. Please take care of your grandpa for a little while. Grandmother? I muttered. Then I suddenly noticed that I was gripping something in my right hand. There was a piece of black candy in my palm. That was strange. I didn't bring any black candy as an offering today. I'm not particularly a believer in gods or ghosts. Could it be grandmother? No, that couldn't be. There's always black candy at the altar, so I must have picked one up unconsciously and put it in my pocket, then forgot about it. But if I think that my grandmother is still watching over me somewhere, I feel like I can keep doing my best in life. Thank you, grandmother, I murmured, looking up at the sky, and left the graveyard.
Where are you right now? Are you safe? Half shouting, I check on Jace's safety, who I suspect is at the scene of the fire. But on the other end of the phone, he dismisses me with an air of annoyance. What's this all about? I'm at work, you know, and don't call me when I'm working. He grumbles and abruptly hangs up. There's no way someone could be casually working at the site of a fire. Upon realizing Jace isn't at his workplace, I am convinced of his betrayal. I decide to execute the plan I had been preparing for a while. My name is Julia Gomez, 29 years old. As a nurse working in a hospital, I confront numerous patients every day. Even now as an adult, I enjoy being of help to others, having always been told that I'm good at caring for others and I enjoy taking care of people. That's why I even think of nursing as my true calling. I have a beloved husband, Jace, whom I've been married to for 2 years, and we've enjoyed our married life in his company housing. I met Jace through a mutual acquaintance 3 years ago. At a drinking party where a few friends gathered, Jace, perhaps because of his shyness, got drunk at a fast pace and went down early. Whether it's because of my profession as a nurse or my inherent personality, I couldn't leave a drunk Jace alone and ended up taking care of him at my place, despite it being our first meeting. The next day, Jace, who didn't remember anything, said with a serious look, "I'll take responsibility," to which I burst out laughing. After explaining the situation to the confused him and assuring him that nothing inappropriate happened, he apologized sheepishly. That's how our relationship began, and we got married after dating for a year. Now, as we approach our 3rd year of marriage, we don't have any children yet, but I believe I can build a warm family with Jace. However, recently his work has been busy, his weekend work has increased, and he often comes home with a cold attitude. Moreover, even when we're sitting on the sofa watching TV together, he's constantly looking at his smartphone screen and sighing deeply. At first I wondered, did I do something to upset him? And I tried to recall my actions, but nothing came to mind. Gradually, I became worried about Jace's health, so I started researching well-balanced menus and preparing more substantial meals for his lunchbox and dinner. On that day, my hospital operates on a 2-shift system of day and night, and I was originally scheduled to work the night shift that day. However, I got a message from a colleague the day before asking me to switch from night to day shift, so I quickly changed to the day shift. I had originally told Jace that I was on the night shift, so I intended to tell him about the shift change, but things were hectic and I ended up contacting him on the day itself. I sent him a message saying, "I switched to the day shift today, so I'll cook dinner and wait for you," but the reply was slow to come. I thought he might be busy with work, and while I was focusing on my duties, a few hours later I got a reply saying, "Understood." Before, even during work, he would reply quickly and sometimes use emojis in his texts, but lately, his replies have been short. Is he that busy, or is this what happens after 2 years of marriage? Feeling a little lonely, I hurried home after buying ingredients at the supermarket after work, determined to cook a nutritious meal again today. Today's cooking was a great success, even by my standards. I dish up the finished meal, take a quick photo, and post it on my cooking account on social media. While I enjoy cooking for Jace, posting photos of my cooking on social media has also become something I look forward to. A few minutes after posting the photo, I get a notification on my social media. Heh, they're commenting again so soon. One of my cooking friends I met through my social media cooking account has been commenting a lot lately. It was refreshing to have a connection different from my work colleagues, and it made me happy. While I was doing that, Jace came home from work, and I, who had been waiting to have dinner with him, hurriedly reheated the food. "Welcome home, dinner's ready. Did you have a busy day again?" Thanks. Yeah, I guess so, I'm tired. But more importantly, you had a sudden shift to day work, huh? I see Jace, who's changed into his loungewear, sit down in his chair looking exhausted and bring over the reheated food. "Yeah, a colleague had an urgent matter. Sorry for the late notice." I also sit down at the table and start eating dinner, saying, "Let's eat." "No, it's fine. It was a sudden decision after all. But I'd like you to tell me earlier in the future. Sometimes I have plans to go drinking with colleagues." "Ah, I see. Got it." While saying that, I noticed that Jace hadn't been eating much since earlier. Is the food not very good? Could it be that it didn't suit his taste? Worried, I asked, and Jace's hand holding the fork stopped dead in its tracks. Then he opened his mouth with a somewhat awkward expression. "No, that's not it. I just don't seem to have an appetite. Sorry, I'll eat it for breakfast tomorrow." Jace, giving a forced laugh, said, "Thanks for the meal," got up from his seat and headed towards the bathroom. More than half the food was still left on the table, just as I thought. With a certain conviction, I followed Jace, who was heading to the bathroom. "Hey, are you feeling okay? You haven't seemed well recently. I'm worried. You should go to the doctor." Jace, brushing his teeth in the bathroom, rinsed his mouth and laughed off my words. "I'm fine. Oh, maybe it's because I haven't been exercising lately. I'm going for a walk now." Saying this, Jace tidied himself up and quickly headed to the front door. "I'll go with you," I said, but was gently turned down. Even more worried, I decided to secretly follow Jace, who'd gone out, just in case he collapsed on the way, so I could go help right away. Even though that's what I was thinking on the surface, somewhere in my heart there might have already been a different anxiety swirling around. That anxiety was soon confirmed as I started tailing him. Contrary to my concerns, Jace, who was walking spiritedly, stops in front of a park a short distance from the house. He looked around and seemed to be contacting someone on his smartphone. Then, a white car pulled up. Jace approached the white car and chatted briefly with the person in the driver's seat. It's too dark to see clearly. As I got a little closer, I could see the person in the driver's seat. A young woman with long curly hair giving a seductive impression. The moment I saw her, my hand naturally pulled out my phone and activated the camera. Jace getting in the passenger seat, the woman laughing. I reflexively captured the scene in a photo, and by the time I had came to my senses, the car with the two of them had driven off. Surprise, along with confusion, suspicion, and various emotions swirled around in my head, leaving me unable to move from the spot. Then, a message came from Jace saying, "I bumped into a friend, so I'll be home a bit late." A friend? By chance? The scene from earlier was burned into my eyelids, and I just couldn't bring myself to believe Jace's words. That night, Jace didn't come home until after 1 a.m. My anxiety had reached its limit when, with the tears spilling out, I thrust the photo I'd taken at Jace. Seeing the photo, Jace froze, then quickly laughed it off. "Oh, I just ran into a client salesperson while I was on my walk." "I was just giving advice, nothing more. Trust me." He looked at me with a sad expression like a victim, giving me the sense that he wouldn't allow any further questioning. After that, Jace's work became extremely busy, and I often had to work overtime on the days when I was on the day shift. Even amidst our conflicting schedules, I tried to find time to talk about the incident from before, but was dismissed with, "I'm tired." Overtime yesterday, working on a day off today, really? During work, whenever my guard was let down, the image of Jace and that woman being close would come to mind, making me feel uneasy. Finishing my night shift, the morning sun was piercing to my tired eyes. I realized I had been neglecting myself recently due to all the worry and anxiety, so I stopped by a cake shop that was open early in the morning and bought a cake. With my mood slightly lifted, I left the store and took a different route home. There were many hotels in this area, and I often saw couples that looked like they were up to something, but maybe because it was early morning, there was a quiet atmosphere. While walking carefully so as to not damage the cake, thinking things like, "I have some tea at home, maybe we can drink it together," I caught a glimpse of a young man and woman coming out of a hotel on the opposite sidewalk. I casually glanced over and froze. There was Jace, squinting his sleepy eyes and smiling, and the woman with the long curly hair who was in the car that day smiling back at him. The cake I was holding slipped from my hand and squished as it hit the ground. In my whitening head, only the sense of mission to leave evidence remained. With trembling hands, I took out my phone and took a picture of the two of them, arm in arm and smiling at each other. The two of them captured in the snapshot looked just like a couple. My heart was pounding and I was breaking out in a cold sweat. As I thought, Jace had been lying. In my view was the cake box that had fallen to the ground and the photo of the two. Staring blankly at them, I was thinking in the corner of my mind, I can't be with him anymore. One day, when the series of events had turned my suspicions about Jace into certainty, the word divorce took on a sense of reality. That day, I was working the day shift busy as usual. Just as I was handling a phone call, I heard sirens from far off and could tell that fire trucks were passing through the neighborhood. It wasn't just one, but 2 or 3 in succession, which made me worried that there might be a fire somewhere. After finishing the call and taking a breather, 2 of my colleagues who had gone to the patient's room returned, talking about how scary it was. Good work, what happened? Thinking there might be some trouble, I asked, and they lowered their voices to tell me, there's a fire at Company A. A patient we just passed in the hall said so. Company A? A fire? The moment I heard those words, a cold sweat trickled down my back. Excusing myself to my colleagues and gripping my phone, I quickly headed to a secluded spot. Company A, where the fire was reported, was where Jace worked. With a prayer-like feeling, I called Jace. As usual, I had seen him off to work that morning. Since the series of events, we hardly saw each other at home and talked less, but I never missed seeing him off in the morning. Please pick up. As if my prayer had been answered, on the 3rd or 4th ring, I heard Jace's voice say, "Hello? Where are you? Are you okay?" To me, who was half shouting to confirm his safety, the man himself sounded annoyed. "What's the matter all of a sudden? I'm at work, you know, and don't call me during work hours." He grumbled and hung up after a single sentence. Only the end of call tone, a beeping sound came through my earpiece. From Jace's response, I was relieved to know that he wasn't caught in the fire, but I felt a big discomfort. There's no way he could be working normally at a place where a fire was happening. Furthermore, I was increasingly angered by his words and attitude, which seemed to trample on my feelings of concern. Jace is probably not at work right now. I saw him off to work as usual today, but the place he went to was definitely not his workplace. Since we got married, I might have unknowingly been seeing him off to another woman's place all along. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw his shimmering, long, curly hair. I made up my mind and made a call to a certain person from my clenched phone. After finishing my work safely, I hurried home and began to pack up the furniture and appliances around the house. Then the doorbell rang. Ding dong! When I opened the front door, it was not Jace standing there, but a friend from college. This friend knew about me and Jace's situation and had volunteered to help with this running away from home. Despite my sudden request for help moving my belongings from work, she readily agreed. "Thank you so much, I'll treat you to something next time." Feeling apologetic, I said, but she returned with a smile. "You've had it tough, haven't you? I'm always ready to help." I felt grateful for having such a good friend, a feeling that had faded recently, and my heart warmed. Together, we moved out the furniture and appliances and also loaded the clothes I had prepared in advance into the car. The room, now missing the furniture and appliances I had been using since my single days, had hardly any belongings left and seemed very empty. Looking at such a room, I asked myself again if I had any lingering attachments to my past life. No, I don't need it anymore. Without feeling any pull to stay, I briskly turned on my heel. My destination was an apartment near my workplace. Actually, on the day I saw Jace leaving a hotel with a woman, I went straight to a real estate agent in a rush. I wasn't sure about getting a divorce yet, but I had rented an apartment just in case. Pleased with my own decision, I checked the items I had moved into the apartment and began to unpack. Then, I remembered something and pulled out my phone. Holding the phone to my ear, I waited for the robotic voice guidance to start. Several hours later, after settling down from moving, while I was taking a break, I got a line call. Checking the display, I saw the name Jace. Exhaling deeply, I waited a moment before answering. "Hello?" "Julia, where are you? When I got home, it was empty and I can't use my phone anymore. What's going on?" Most of the stuff at home was originally mine, so I just took it with me. And as for the phone, it was under my name, so I canceled it. His frantic voice came through the phone, but I calmly stated the facts. By the way, isn't your phone unusable? Well, I'm only able to use Line because I'm connected to Wi-Fi. No, more importantly, you said you took the stuff. You're not seriously running away, are you? This is a joke, right? As I heard Jay still not understanding the situation, my irritation grew. Are you seriously saying that? Don't tell me you forgot about the call this afternoon. Someone who's at work can't just keep working calmly when there's a fire happening, right? Struggling to keep my voice from shaking with anger, I asked something I wanted to know for a long time. Where were you and who were you with instead of going to work? At my question, Jace took a breath and fell silent. After a brief silence, Jace, perhaps unable to withstand my silent pressure, reluctantly began to speak. Look, the story about bumping into a female client while walking, it was a lie. The truth is, she's a colleague from work and I was at her place today. What Jace confessed was the story I had anticipated. He had been involved with the company receptionist, Savannah, for about 6 months. He had been seeing her on the days I worked the night shift. But recently, as Savannah became more demanding, he had lied about having to work overtime on his days off just to see her. And today, they both had taken paid leave and spent the day at Savannah's house. They only found out about the fire when Savannah's phone received a call from their office. Having confessed everything, Jay still pleaded over the phone. I want you to forgive me. I thought, what a joke. I'm glad to finally hear the truth from you, Jace. Despite our short marriage, I was doing my best to build a good family life. Over the phone, I could tell that Jace was trying to stop me, saying, wait, but I ignored him and said, I want a divorce due to your infidelity. Let's discuss the issues of damage through our lawyers. Goodbye. Jay seemed to have something else to say, but seeing my firm stance, he finally gave up, murmuring, okay. Afterwards, the fire at Company A was reported in local news, becoming quite a big story. Seeing the news, I froze. The culprit behind the fire was none other than Jace's mistress, Savannah. Early in the morning, Savannah had snuck into the company's conference room, pulled a thread from the edge of a curtain, and lit it with a lighter. The fire quickly spread throughout the curtain, resulting in the conference room being burnt down. Fortunately, the building itself only suffered minor damage, but from the surveillance footage, it was clear that Savannah was the perpetrator. As for her motive, Savannah said that the married man she was dating wouldn't divorce his wife, and even her threats of exposing their relationship to the company had no effect. She claimed she thought she had to do something drastic. To be honest, I didn't understand why anyone would want to commit a crime just to be with Jace. However, according to Savannah's colleagues, she often complained about being lonely. Perhaps she envied the married man who seemed to have everything, thinking that having him would fill her own loneliness. Thinking this far, I suddenly realized that feeling lonely even when you're with someone is far more painful. After the divorce talk, I hadn't been in direct contact with Jace, but the divorce proceedings were advancing through our lawyers. In the meantime, I heard about what was happening at Jace's company. After the fire broke out, Jace, who knew nothing about it, was apparently surprised when he heard the truth about the incident from the company's general affair representative. Savannah was arrested immediately, and news of their relationship spread quickly throughout the company. Unable to bear the gossip any longer, Jace resigned from his job. Hearing about all this, I felt a tiny bit of sympathy, but I mostly thought that Jace had brought this upon himself by choosing another woman. With that in mind, I went through the divorce process without much emotion and we successfully divorced. The process was made smooth by the pictures of Jace's infidelity that I had taken on my phone. Additionally, I made sure that the alimony was properly paid from Jace's severance pay. Now that my connection with Jace was completely severed, I was enjoying living alone in my new apartment where I had become quite settled. Perhaps I had been neglecting myself by always putting others first. While continuing my job as a nurse, I started to enjoy cooking, which had been my greatest pleasure during my marriage with Jace, just for myself. In the morning, I opened the window of my apartment to let in the fresh air. Glancing outside, I saw a family of 3 walking together happily. Seeing that, I felt no regret at all, and rather, I felt excited thinking about my future. Just then, my phone buzzed. I returned to my room and couldn't help but smile at the screen. I had hit it off with someone I connected with on a cooking account on social media, and we had become close in no time. We had made a plan to cook together that day. Responding to the message saying, I'll be there soon, I got started on preparing the meal we were going to cook. Hey, I've been thinking about taking Mom on a trip for her birthday. Would that be okay? When I got home from work, my husband David approached me with this idea. David has a good relationship with his parents. They are down-to-earth people and always treat me well. However, since my promotion, work has become busier, and I hardly have any time to visit my in-laws. I don't mind, but do you think it'd be okay if I didn't go? I've been incredibly busy with work lately, and it's hard for me to get a long weekend off. I wouldn't be able to go on the trip with them, but David seemed okay with that. Sure, that's fine. My parents understand you're busy, and they seem to feel a bit obliged when you're around. I think they might even feel more at ease if it's just me. Next time we visit them, you should come with me though. Even though I get along well with my in-laws, staying overnight with them is a different story. I genuinely want them to have a good time, so I decided to prepare a gift for my mother-in-law and asked David to give it to her. However, this turned out to be a mistake. My name is Angela, and I'm a 32-year-old employee at a corporation. I met David 3 years ago and we got married. We've been thinking about having a child, but my job has been very demanding that we are not moving forward on that part. Still, I've always valued having separate time even after marriage, and I'm quite content with our non-interfering lifestyle. On the day David was to leave for the trip with his parents, I left for work early. After a while, I received a message from David. He was on his way to his parents' house planning to head to a hotel the next morning. David has been working overtime and on weekends too, so I was happy to hear he was getting a break. I texted him back to have fun, but the weather started to look suspicious in the afternoon. The forecast changed to heavy rain by night, and I was instructed to wrap up work and head home, so I left the office in the evening. When I stepped outside, it was already starting to rain and the sky was dark. I only had a folding umbrella, which felt inadequate, but I managed to get home before it started pouring. David's parents live in a neighboring state. I started to worry and called David, who assured me, "I'm at my parents' house now, and it's not too bad here. I think we'll be okay." Sure, it wasn't raining that much yet, and sometimes weather forecasts can be exaggerated. It might not even rain that much in reality. I was worried about his elderly parents, but David was there, and I felt a bit relieved thinking they would call if anything happened. However, as the night progressed, the rain got heavier. Looking outside, it was clear the weather was pretty rough, and it would be better not to venture out. I turned on the TV, feeling anxious, and it seemed like it was raining quite heavily in the area where David's parents lived. As I was watching the weather news, the scene switched to a relay screen. The scene was the city where David's parents live. In a panic, I tried calling David, but I couldn't get through to him no matter how many times I tried. I sent him a message, but there was no reply. Worried, I called my mother-in-law, and a shocking truth was revealed. After a few rings, she answered the call. "Mom, I saw it on the news. Are you okay?" "Thank you, Angela. It's quite serious here and we got stranded while deciding whether to go to the shelter." Apparently, the rain had flooded up to their doorstep and they couldn't walk to the shelter. They don't have a car at their place, so they've taken refuge on the second floor of the house. "But isn't David driving over?" When I said that, my mother-in-law responded with confusion. "David? He said he was coming here? We didn't get any notification." "What?" Our conversation wasn't lining up. As we slowly pieced things together, it seems my mother-in-law thought David was headed to their house out of concern due to rain. "No, he was supposed to go on a trip with you guys starting from tomorrow, right? He said he'd leave in the morning, so he was heading over today. He told me he had arrived a while ago." "A trip? What are you talking about?" At this point, I began to understand, but for now, I was more worried about my in-laws. I told my mother-in-law to gather necessary items and hopped into my car. I've always enjoyed camping and often drove on mountain roads, so before getting married, I got a car suitable for rough terrains. I thought about selling my car after getting married, but since David uses his car for work, I didn't see the need to sell it and kept using it. I hadn't been camping lately, so the car hadn't been used much, but I never thought it would be useful at a time like this. After about an hour, I reached my in-laws' house. The rain seemed to have lightened up a bit. However, it was uncertain when it would get worse again, and the nearby river was reportedly rising. We had to get away from there as soon as possible. I told my in-laws to get into the car quickly and brought them to my house. Once we arrived, I served some tea. They seemed to relax and I felt at ease too. Then my father-in-law spoke up. "Angela, we can't thank you enough for all that you've done, but we can't reach David either. We'd like to know what's going on." I couldn't lie at this point. I told them that David had left the house saying that he was going on a trip with them. However, they said they hadn't heard anything about it. I had a bad feeling about this. I went into David's room. There, several travel magazines were lying around. I had seen him reading them recently. He said he was figuring out where to take his parents, so I took his word for it and didn't ask anything further. However, upon closer inspection, the magazines clearly featured tourist spots for couples. There were several options marked with the corners of the pages folded. Upon checking them, one place had a circle drawn with a marker. Moreover, there was a mark on the booking site for that particular accommodation. How conspicuous. I booted up the computer in the living room. The history showed access to the booking site and a confirmation email that had been sent to an email address he doesn't usually use. If it were a trip with his parents, the reservation should have been for 3 people, but it was stated as for 2. I usually use my work computer, so I barely touched this one. So that's why my husband was off guard. He was too unsuspecting. Come to think of it, my husband loves writing and he kept a diary. I went back to his room and searched for the diary. I found it surprisingly quickly and hesitantly opened it to today's date to find the word trip and a heart symbol written. I was a bit taken aback. As I flipped back through the diary, it was filled with clear evidence of infidelity. Whether he didn't think he was doing anything wrong or was intoxicated with the immorality of it all, there were several entries about fun dates. My memory of the past is vague, but remembering recent events, it seemed that he had been going on these dates on days when he said he was working overtime or going into work on his days off. If it was just suspicious, I thought I could somehow gloss it over and not tell my in-laws and discuss it when my husband came home, but it was too blatant to hide from my in-laws. Besides, I felt like I was being made a fool of by his openly cheating, and there was no way I, with my high pride, could ever forgive this. While I was talking with my in-laws, my cell phone rang. It was from my husband. I asked my in-laws to stay quiet, and I answered the phone in a flustered manner. "Hello, where are you right now?" A calm voice came from the other end. "I'm at my parents' house. I'm going on a trip with them from tomorrow, remember? I emailed you about it in the afternoon. Why are you so flustered?" "I saw on TV that there's heavy rain in your parents' area, so I was worried if you were okay." "Yeah, it is raining heavily, but it's not a problem. Is that all?" My husband lied blatantly. He was going on a trip in the opposite direction, so he had no way of knowing the local situation. In front of me, my father-in-law was showing his anger, but my mother-in-law was restraining him. "Got it. You're coming back from the trip the day after tomorrow, right?" "Yeah, but I got the rest of next week off. I'll stay over after I drop off my parents. I guess I'll be home in about 3 days." Was he planning to enjoy such a long cheating trip? Suppressing my anger, I somehow managed to hang up the phone. Then I told my in-laws, "I'm sorry, I don't think I can continue with David anymore. He was cheating so blatantly. David must be planning to end things with me as well. Well, if that's the case, before he brings up divorce, I'll divorce him. It's my only pride. Fortunately, we don't have any children and my job is going well. It shouldn't be much of a problem if I got divorced and became single. Rather, if I don't have to do housework for my husband, it might be easier than it is now." My mother-in-law was crying and my father-in-law was furious. My in-laws apologized to me repeatedly, but they are going through a tough time too. This is not the time to make an apology to me. Besides, it's my husband who's at fault. I don't think it's my in-laws' responsibility. Surely he would get at least some information about what's going on at his parents' place from TV or the internet. Yet he didn't even contact his parents to check if they were okay. Maybe he's too infatuated with his affair partner, but no matter what, it's too much. I thought he was someone who could cherish his parents, but I was disappointed by this incident. I said to my in-laws who kept apologizing, "Could you give me a hand then?" The next day, I took a day off from work to put a plan into action. After a night, the rain had stopped at my in-laws' place and it was reported on TV that the damage wasn't severe. My in-law seemed relieved. After confirming that, I started to tidy up the house with the help of my in-laws. I called a friend who was a real estate agent and started looking for a place I could rent immediately. My friend said that since it was the off-season, there were places available for immediate occupancy and he would send me some options. In between tidying, I contacted a moving company, and because it was also their off-season, they said they could move me the next day. Things moved quickly, and luckily I found a place near work, so I decided to settle there. With the help of my in-laws, we almost finished tidying up by evening and I saw them off. The next day, I was going to move out of the apartment where I had been living with my husband. I had no hesitation about moving quickly. Originally, this apartment was mine and it's still in my name. I thought we could keep living here until we had children or buy a house. I've had a relatively long relationship with the landlord, and we chat whenever we meet. I called the landlord and explained the situation. I told him I was moving out and would cancel the lease at the end of the month. He was surprised to hear I was moving out immediately, but he understood the situation and agreed to change the front door's number lock code before my husband got home. When I moved here, I was puzzled by the unfamiliar number lock, but I was just realizing the advantage of being able to change it quickly. The next day, the movers took my belongings to the new apartment, and I asked the courier service to send my husband's belongings somewhere else. The new apartment was a great fit for me, and because it was the off-season, there was no first month's rent and the moving costs were also discounted. Once the move was over, I hurried to a law office. My in-laws called me worried, but I told them the move had gone smoothly and said I'd contact them once things had settled down. Days passed and it was the day when my husband was coming home. As expected, he called me in the evening. "Angela, where are you? I can't open the door of the house, and the mailbox is blocked. What's going on?" I could hardly suppress my laughter at my frantic husband's voice. "I've moved out," I said. "What?" "I'm divorcing you." "Huh?" I coldly told my surprised husband. Of course, right? Can I continue to live with someone who lies about going on a trip with his parents and actually goes on a cheating trip? At this, my husband fell silent. And isn't it too harsh not to contact it at all when your own parents' house is being hit by heavy rain? Hit by? You can't possibly not know, right? Have you not been watching TV or the internet at all? But don't worry, your parents came to my place and their house is safe, but you may never be able to return to that house. As I saw my in-laws off, my father-in-law firmly stated, "We have no intention of letting David back into this house. He must pay for his actions." "What? Wait, what's happening? What should I do? And where are my belongings?" My husband began to panic even more, but by this point I felt no sympathy for him. You know, if you're going to cheat, at least be smart enough not to get caught. The days you cheated, the name of the person with whom you had an affair, her address, I know it all. I even know the hotel you stayed at and the places you visited on your affair trip. You really thought you could hide it all? My husband was the type to take notes about everything, and his diary contained all the details of his affair, including his mistress's identity and address. From his computer history, I could see all the places he had visited with his mistress. I don't know if he underestimated me or he's just plain stupid. Perhaps it's a bit of both. If you wanted to divorce that badly, at least have the decency to do it before moving on to the next one. With that, my husband started making outrageous excuses. "No, you've got it all wrong. It wasn't an affair. You've been so busy with work recently, you're rarely at home. You've been cooking less, our meals are mostly takeout, and you only clean and do the laundry every other day. You've been slacking off." At his words, I lost it. What? You're saying it wasn't an affair? How else would you explain it? And you're blaming me for the housework when you've dumped it all on me? You're usually home before me, so why don't you do some of the chores yourself? I've asked you for help countless times, haven't I? But you've always made excuses, saying you don't know how to do it. Taken aback by my outburst, my husband fell silent. "Oh, by the way, your belongings are shipped to your mistress's place." At this, my husband's voice noticeably changed. "Wait, hold on a minute. Why would you do that?" He probably thought I had sent his stuff to his parents' house. I had considered doing that at first, but I didn't want to inconvenience my in-laws, especially not after they'd just cleaned up after heavy rain. So I decided to send his things to his mistress's place. "By the way, your stuff should arrive tomorrow. I hope her husband doesn't find out." Turns out, his mistress was a junior colleague in the same department as my husband. I initially thought she was single, but my husband's diary revealed she was also married. "What have you done?" My husband shouted, but it wasn't my problem. "You're the one at fault here for cheating. I have ample evidence of your infidelity, and I've already consulted a lawyer. I'll be seeking damages and a divorce. You have no right to complain since you've been cheating, right?" "But that's not it. I thought if you knew I was interested in another woman, you'd try harder to keep me by doing more housework." At his words, I could only sigh in disbelief. "You sure are confident in yourself. Unfortunately, you're not nearly as attractive as you think you are. You've really overestimated yourself. Let me shatter that image for you." With that, I hung up, fully intending to make a fool of him. Later, I sent a certified letter to my husband's company and demanded compensation for the emotional distress caused by the affair from both my husband and his mistress. When my husband's belongings arrived at his mistress's place, it naturally caused a lot of trouble. She ended up getting divorced too, and they both had to pay damages. Neither my husband nor his mistress could continue working at the company and had to leave. I managed to get a divorce without any trouble and received my damages, so I don't really know or care about what happened afterwards. However, I do still keep in touch with my former in-laws, who still send me gifts during the holidays. I've heard that my ex-husband has returned to them, but they've made it clear that he's not allowed back into the house. Even they don't know where he is or what he's doing now. With my return to the single life, I only have to take care of myself when it comes to the chores and cooking. I no longer have to accommodate my picky ex-husband, and on busy days, I can even just have a beer and snacks. In a way, I feel more fulfilled than before.